All right, you people out of town, this is just a minute on the tape, not for TV. And you people here, despite my quite real warnings about closing up operations having to do with the numbers of people, I do not want anybody to be adversely affected incorrectly by osmosis through secondhand smoke, because I am in no wise about to stop this, and I am in no way discouraged. It just seems to have reached some sort of number wall compared or based upon the kind of effort that I'm either willing to put forward or the kinds of effort. That is, it may be that I am not making enough effort here, basing it on getting more people here, more pork chop sandwiches showing up. Or it could be that I've reached some sort of limit operating this way, and there's only so many people out of 6 billion. But either way, I don't want you to feel like you're discouraged. My threat is real about stopping everything, but I look upon it more as a challenge, because I'm not fixing to get out of the business. I can't. That's not the point. So I don't want you to get discouraged and think, oh, well, it's all winding down. Of course, if you want to, you can do that. And go ahead and die your old nasty death. But don't expect me to show up at the wake. I'll be in Brazil starting all over. Rio. There was once a people who discovered a magical horse, which they immediately sensed was potentially faster than all others, but it only had one leg, until someone said that it did. Then it had 2. And once someone noted the 2, it had 3, and so on, until it achieved the potential they had initially supposed. Non-chaotic data transmission. The steeds of cosmic knights are not limited to 4 legs. Extragalactic finding. Never close down the data transmission too soon. One man asserts that the everyday grievances and afflictions of life affect him less and less the more and more he realizes the problems his own mind causes him. One man's mind again spoke up. Why, oh why, do you continue to find fault with only me? And he replied once more, because only that which has unfulfilled potential is worthy the effort. One man had an unruly child, but so many around him seemed to have one also that he accepted the situation and let him grow up and die in that condition. One reason men like metaphors and parables is that they never call them personally by name or identify the specific human functions they refer to. Yeah, you won't like it, but additional notation regarding man's creative stratagems and their true purposes. Early on, men invented numbers so they could count things rather than have to think about them. The thing about being an ordinary man is that if your mind says, it works for me, it works for you also. I leave to you any qualitative judgment in this matter. In a certain family which had genetic history strains running through their brains, the father one day inquired of his eldest son, do you not find it mildly interesting that almost immediately after man's mind began functioning, he began to dream of gods and alien creatures? But people with that kind of non-spatial memory find almost everything that man has gone through interesting. One man thought, the only stuff that's not interesting is stupid stuff. And all stupid stuff has a common denominator that has escaped my attention until this very moment. Sing along. Birds got to swim, fish got to fly. I cannot see with me in my eye. Oh, do, 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 do. There was once a prince who wanted to stage his own great struggle. and after studying the matter, conceived of two possible approaches, either to attack that which already is, or go directly to places that are yet to be. A man once threw a coin into the ocean to see how many of the waves would grab for it. The future sometimes looks back to see how many in the present are watching it. Another brief history of man's discoveries and their aftermath. Once the initial intrigue subsided and men realized that dreams signified the fact that the mind was never going to shut down, they knew they were in trouble. From our non-local psychiatric encyclopedia. The difference between a mystic and the insane is that if the mystic does it, it'd be on purpose. A gentleman who, on occasion, had visited areas beyond his normal place of residence, upon hearing this, mused to himself that, unrealized by neighbors, the true derangement is to be found in the normal thinking of everyday men. Back when, once men concluded that their mind was someone else speaking to them, the die was cast, the deed done, and the machinery properly set in motion. The trail to back when is part of the memory of very few men. For those who don't believe there is a difference between thinking and consciousness, consider the fact that as long as you're thinking, you can't be more conscious. A viewer writes, didn't you leave out an important modifier or two? There was once a man who had a special message for crested sparrows, but they were so few in numbers that he had great difficulty in attracting them directly. He ultimately realized that if he put out a general call to all sparrows, that some of the crested ones would respond along with the others. But on further reflection, he had to ask himself, in spite of the fact that a few of the ones he sought would show up with the rest of the crowd, whether or not it would be worth it to have to be surrounded by all of those common birds. The era of the more anxious to know is not in anthropomorphizing, but in failure to pursue its reverse. Well, we got doggy bags. You can take that one with you. After being of some assistance to a certain alien force, a man was offered as his reward the choice of becoming able to either give everything he perceived a number or else a name. And after pondering this for a moment, he noted to the force that he could already do both of these. So the force then pondered what the man said for a moment, then replied, well, screw it, and left. For the rest of his life, the man told the story over and over again, and adding as its moral the fact that not everything that happens to a man necessarily has a distinguishing moral. And many people were immediately and instantly weary of the tale the very first time they heard it. And here, yet another fashion clash between local priests and philosophers on the one hand, and those who visited other lands on the other, in that while the former believe that there must be some specific purpose to life, the latter are dressed for all occasions. This in contrast to the confining wardrobe suggestions offered by that mental fashion maven, Horace Greeley-Grabber, who said, wear a vest, young man, wear a vest. While it is not accurate to say that it is the mind that awakens one, it is fair to say that it is the mind that will keep one from awakening. After surveying the collective's lack of interest in the subject, one man said to himself, if I myself do not undertake the study of consciousness, who will? On another world, when life produced its thinking creatures, it gave them a choice to either be born fully completed and to speak and think plainly and directly, or come forth in an inchoate condition with talk and thought always askew. "Hey," said one neuron to another, "what's askew?" And no one replied, "I don't know, what's new with you?" And them both being local residents, they understood well that although there is nothing fresh or new in a straight line, one must pretend otherwise to retain citizenship. We don't have a doggy bag big enough to take that one along with her. At the physical level, to keep a relationship going, you must act as though the other party still interests you, even if they increasingly do not. If I told ordinary people that this also applies to the operations of their mind, there would be little likelihood of them hearing me. Birds of a feather flocking together is not a half of it. For his oblique 10th birthday, as a study aid, one man gave his son a neurologically correct doll. Billfolds and deliberation. Those more conscious, and I mean really more conscious, carry no ID. As told by a certain non-local legend, the true mythical king is the king who has no foes and can thus never be defeated. Earthbound minds are gravitationally unable to grasp the merit, utility, and supreme grandeur of what the tale tells. A porch divided against itself will forever stand. One man traded in all of his prayers, dreams, and mythical gadgets for one erratic drummer to set the tempo for his efforts. Offenses and malfeasances of the head. The only sin possible for the mind is for it to be a squanderer. A philosopher once tried to entice a mystic into a verbal debate by asking him, "Is there any chance that you might be wrong?" And received the reply, "No, because to be so, you must first believe that you are right." And finally, from our nonpartisan dictionary, this entry, thoughts. The demons of the non-religious. Okay, of everybody. Pretending to pick up from the last time we taped to give the illusion of some sequence, cohesiveness, if not downright vacidity, of these discrete, separate, and totally unrelated episodes. I'd refer you back to, or to rephrase what we were talking about last time, maybe, was that the problem with fixing on a problem, that is, of identifying a problem, is that you will then squander, dissipate your energies after that on the problem. For anyone who was not here last time we were talking, or if we weren't actually talking about this and I just said that, I believe either in this life, another life, or on another planet with another group I was talking to last time, we were mentioning the fact of how all of civilization, everything that man's mind does is, in a quite unspectacular, non-spooky sense, is a response to problems. Is the mind attempting to grow, and then collectively speaking, it produces civilization, produces what seems to be the progress of man, and en masse, and then individually it seems to be involved, or it comes out as being involved with people wanting to do better, to change. And obviously, from any reasonable standpoint, no one would attempt to change unless there was a reason to change, and any reason to change without any undue rigmarole can be referred to as a problem. That a man will not attempt to quit drinking, overeating, whatever he's doing, unless he considers it a problem. He simply will not, and that's obvious as hell. Then we get past that into this sort of activity, is what I believe we were talking about. This is Jupiter. No, oh God. Well, I know I've talked about this before. If it wasn't last time, it will be the next to last time next week. I know it was last time. Somewhere. And I was pointing out that all mystical systems have to be based upon, all attempts for a man to change his consciousness is not free from what I've just described. Just because people believe that they're involved in extraordinary activity, which they are, if they are. That is, it is extraordinary if they're actually involved in it, and if they're involved in it, it is an extraordinary activity. But even then, they're ordinarily, as and with everything else, overeating, drinking, whatever it is, bad habits, trying to improve your personality, trying to improve your... People must be told in the beginning. They must grasp at something that there is a problem. And I pointed out to you, when this is operating at best speed, whatever the hell that means. Even I've said it and almost choke every time I say it, because it sounds like, well, when this is done correctly, which right there implies it can be done incorrectly, which would be a problem. I personally, normally, to protect myself from those intergalactic suits and haranguing letters from aliens, I normally say when it's operating at best speed rather than correctly. It's when it's going at its best. Which I must tell you also, I damn near choke on that, because who's to say what's best other than me, the person talking. But at best, we will limit this to one man's view. I could be proven wrong, but I can't be proven right. Remember that. So it doesn't matter. That operated with the potential greatest speed would be for a person to do it for no particular reason. This is damn near impossible. It's like trying to start off running if somebody says, well, everyone else is walking. If ordinary thinking is walking, what you're trying to do by undertaking this is to run. You go, okay, I can follow that allegory. You go out, which foot do I start on? Or, where do I start? Where's the line? When do I run? And whoever gave you that instruction, go, well, no. And you never hear him more. Like, well, when do I run? Well, show me. Should I kneel down? I got a running start? Should I start on your left foot, right foot? How much faster should I go? Why do all the systems have a system to them? Why does everything that a man has ever heard that's available generally, if it's written down, is about what I'm speaking of. If it's been written down, if it's in the religious category, if it's in New Age, if it's in philosophy, if it's in mysteries and mysticism, it is always based upon a problem. That is in the introduction, that is in the first words of the treatise. But then why it survives, why it seems to be where they're being written down and remembered, is that there is a way to approach the problem. But the problem must be stated first. If you never state the problem, what the hell are you going to do? Ordinarily, just saying that if you tried to call out and say, is anybody out there interested in doing something inside their own head that just would be extraordinary, that you can't seem to find out what to do, and a few people went, yeah. And you go, well, great. Glad to hear it. And you think, well, why the hell did you call me? I mean, what the hell did you make a noise for? You feel as though that's a problem. It will motivate a person. There's no reason anybody would listen to this sort of thing even once. You say, listen to it because there's a motivation that I want to change, but you've got to remember that people want to change and they feel like being alive is a problem. And being alive is no problem. If you think being alive is a problem, you'll never get around to this sort of thing. Because being alive is not a problem. You live and you die. There's no problem. For people, it's only the crudest of people, only the simplest, the ordinariest of people believe that there's anything serious about life. And there's no way to describe it. I can make jokes forever about being serious and apparently poke fun at things. But there's nothing to be poked at specifically that's deserving of it. There's no selective foolishness going on in life. It's just to see that ordinary people and you at the ordinary level of mind grasping for something to do looks upon its own struggle to grow, which is the only possibility of growth available to man, the only real one. It looks upon the possibility as being a problem, as being serious. Then they fall into the world of personal anecdotes. That is, they take it personally. They believe that there is something to be learned from their life personally. They believe that they must learn something from their life personally. I will quote a great philosopher. I normally hate to do it, but it says, a porch divided against itself will forever stand. Am I going to have to translate my own metaphors? As long as you believe there's a problem, by God, there's a problem. As long as you stand there on your porch and think, I do not like the world passing by my door, and I don't care if they're all dressed up like Walt Whitman. I don't like it. They're too noisy. They annoy me. I do not like my fellow man passing by. The thing is, as long as you have the feeling, as long as you operate on the basis that you are watching traffic from the porch, and at least parts of it you do not like, may I be the first to assure you, as happily as possible, that traffic's going to go on until you die. Of course, if I had some reason if you owed me money or made me mad, I might insinuate that might even follow you into the grave. If you think dreams are bad now, when you've eaten anchovies, what if you die and lay down and you think, well, fine, now I'm over it, and you begin to dream? Because I guess somebody, there might be a French author somewhere, that might turn that into some sort of morality play. That would be hell. What? Dreaming while dead. Because then you can't think, well, I'll wake up in 2 or 3 hours and it'll be over. You think, no, I'm going to lay here and dream forever. This kind of spooky stuff. I could have called it other things, but some of you, I will assume by now, is beginning to see why I've used the word serious and kept apparently picking at it. With ordinary people, anything they say serious is serious. That's the way it's supposed to be. Everybody's got their own porch, everyone has their own mind, everyone is looking out at life, and there are things that they do not like that's going by. Of course, I keep saying going by out there. If you get just a little bit better, you realize that going by in here is just as important. Said the chief, temporarily in charge of understatement. But ordinary people, they're born here on a porch. They're born with what appears to be their personality, whatever explanations, and they can get involved with that and keep their porch divided. There's something causes their mind to be that way. Nobody, just a point blank, blunt, plain, everyday look at it. If one was studying consciousness instead of waiting to hear from others, which you're never going to get a message, if you study it yourself, you realize I was born on this damn porch. What else is there to say? It's only ordinary people that go, well, I don't know about that. They go into discussion. Think back. Your first thought, you're on that porch. The first thought, the very first thing you can remember, each person was on your porch. Now what are you going to do? If you're ordinary, you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering, well, did somebody put me there? Okay, somebody put you there. Did they have my well-being in mind? Were they trying to trick me? I mean, at first blush, you may think, well, that could be important. How? No, it's important if you want to keep your porch divided against itself. And it will stand. It will stand the onslaught of superior thinking. It will withstand and fight off any possible force to make you more conscious on the porch. No, no, no. You're safe. You're sane. You're stupid. You're serious. Because the mind will selectively pick out things that it finds serious and important, with all kinds of other terms, but that they take things out there seriously. And as long as you do that, out there remains. And you'll never even get to the point of realizing that in here is also out there, mentally. And so people take life seriously. Quite ordinary, sane people, those that are the backbone of civilization, those who apparently, from all observation, run the world. Also, by all observations, they take the world seriously. And you wouldn't want it otherwise. You wouldn't want a president get elected and suddenly start showing up wearing the nose and glasses and funny hats and wearing buzzers when he meets the new president of France. You don't want a silly person. You want a guy that's taking things seriously. Even if you get to the point that you look at and you realize, now here it is, these people all dressed up, way past middle age, fought all the way to be in charge of countries. Now they stand with their photo opportunities and they're shaking hands discussing what actions they may take about certain economic problems or trying to plan the future of what may happen to some of the present political structures in Central America. And once you see that they got no idea, this might as well be children, literally. It's an easy, if you're ordinary, you might think it's an easy simile to make, but it is literally looking like kids used to. Look at a little boy and girl. She's got on her mother's high heels and her little feet down there, and he's got on his daddy's coat hanging down here, and then playing like mommy and poppy, mommy and daddy. And I'm going to work. And you think, oh, how cute. It's the same thing. But you wouldn't want it otherwise. There is nothing serious in life once you see that life's alive. Because once you see that, I know I can keep saying it, but once you see it, there's just no word other than ridiculous, pathetic. Once you see that life's alive, to then think, well, life needs my help. I mean, whatever the problem is, you look out there and there's serious things going on. There are people dying, which is just a way to keep you, if you're ordinary, distract from the fact that you're dying. Oh, poor old people dying. Maybe I can help them. Anything you take seriously at that level is a kind of supreme. Someone put the word hubris and stupidity together and come up with it. It is, of course, what I was also pointing out of late. The operational flaw in people singing the praises of humility, because all it is stupidity. Because once you see what life is, it's not a problem of being humble. Once you see what life is, the idea of being humble or non-humble is just, unless you don't get drunk, go put on your daddy's coat and big old hat and play mommy and daddy and play like you're going to work and actually play like you've got some intelligence. Because there's nothing to be humble about. You just say, well, you think, where's Buddha now? I need somebody to talk to. Or raise a frog on his arm. He'd dig it. He'd know. Unless you said something. And he'd think another one of those fake enlighteners. Every time the mind takes something seriously, you have identified a problem. In life, as I just pointed out, it's of no significance one way or the other. It means absolutely nothing, and if it meant anything, it would mean that you should be in favor of them staying serious and dumb and stupid and feel like that they're important and should make decisions and try to clean up the problems. Anytime you hear that and you're out there with them, go, yeah, right on, yes. I mean, if you must say anything, if they look your way, go get them. But once you get past that and you take that you personally have a problem, and remember, we're speaking mentally. If you're dying of some disease, if you want to, I grant you that's a problem. But you're in the wrong place. Nobody can stop death. So we're talking about non-physical. After that, to identify a problem, for a would-be mystic, the situation is even more pathetic. It is even more disastrous. And yet, what I was trying to get you to consider, by the same token, when someone goes out expecting to find some direction to do this, you don't even think about it. You don't think about, well, if I find directions, will they actually be directions that aren't no directions at all? You don't even think that way. And normally you do not find such things, because if there are such things, you can't find them. So what you do find is always based upon some sort of system, some sort of attempt. And me saying that I could be proven wrong. But I am telling you, and surely some of you can see theoretically, so that I don't have to stand here and say, well, I could be proven wrong, and everybody think, so you finally admit that you should have come up with a system and told us what to do. No, give me a break. At least theoretically you can understand why I say the fast way should be that if you could bypass all that other shit about, well, we need a system, we got to establish everything that goes with a kind of systematic approach to a problem. Prioritize our efforts and our et cetera and et cetera. All of that is the same thing as going and attending a meeting to quit eating or to quit drinking. If you try and establish some sort of system, you will get involved. There are two ways to put it, but either one's the same. You get involved, a tendency, to say the least, to get involved with the system. At the ordinary level, That is absolutely necessary with life. People will not join the Democratic Party. People will not join the Catholic Church. People will not become Jewish. They will not convert. People will not join up anything in any meaningful manner, in any way that they consider meaningful, unless in some way they can identify themselves with it. And they want to at least once. And life makes these institutional aspects of life operate in such a way that the institutions themselves, the Masons, whatever the hell it is, they will at least at one time, the group itself will go through a procedure, a ritual to identify you at least once, that you get through whatever it was, you took the course, went through some ritual some night or some baptism, some ritual of a religion, and they go, and you swear to do all this, and you are now, they'll shake your hand, put their hand on the head, do something, make a mark on you, cut your hair, do something, they'll say you are now a blank. You are now a Baptist. You are now a Jew. You are a true Muslim. You are a solid member. You are a Mason. And at least once, if it never happens again, but at least once you are identified. Not just you, assuming that you want them to say, all right, congratulations, you're now a member of the Presbyterian Church. And you think, well, good. If you never hear it again, at least you went, whatever the effort was, somebody said, you have bypassed or you have surpassed the problem. The problem to begin with was that you were not a member of a church. You wanted to be, that you were not religious or whatever. You consider that a problem, and you considered the way to solve the problem, the way to treat the problem was, it's obvious. If you felt the need, if you were a person who felt the need to be religious, and you had no church, you had no religion, then, I mean, it's simple, you would think, to cure it. I'll go join a church. And they tell you, well, all right, read this book, come back next week, bring some old clothes, we'll give you a baptism, we'll ask you a couple of questions, we'll ask you if you agree to our creed, read it and look it over, think about it and come back, and if so, you'll be a member. And you say, well, that's the way it goes. That's the way you should do it. But do you remember after that, if there was any, let's give religion itself, since I'm using that again, it's a fair example, give it the original potential of something a bit meta-gnostic, a bit transcendental, the original purpose. And so that is what drove you, let's say, my fictitious person, to become religious. You felt as though I will benefit. Is there a problem? For whatever reason, I'm beginning to fear, whatever it is, you think I would be better if I were religious. So you approach the problem on the basis that it can be treated, and it can be treated obviously by becoming religious. And there's churches there with names, and they say, yes, you can join. They may ask you a few questions, and they say, well, come back, and we'll go through this little ritual, and you will be a member. You then, let us say, if you're an ordinary person, you feel as though the problem has been alleviated. It has been tempered at least, and you feel better. They all congratulate you, all the members of the Presbyterian Church, the local there where you join, they all come around, they say hello, and they swap names, and they say when the services are, and tell you from now on you're one of the family. So then, whatever the motivation, I was giving a certain transcendental possibility that drove you to want to be religious originally. That is now functionally almost a non-entity, because now whatever it was that drove you to be religious, you do not ever, quote, think of it in that way. You're not aware of it anymore in that way. You now think of it as being a Presbyterian. Mm-hmm. But now you understand, with an ordinary person, they will feel as though that did cure the problem. Maybe not all their uncertainties in life and etc. But you should know this. You've probably been through some of it, but you can hear it, that the person says, well, now that I have, or maybe just reconverted, rededicated yourself to the church again after you got grown, and you say, well, I drifted from the church for 20 or 30 years, and I thought I knew it all, and blah, blah, blah. But I do, you might ask the person, after they got through with this, they went back and go through the procedure and got rebaptized or whatever the ritual was, and they say, well, congratulations, you are now back a full member of, in good standing with the Presbyterian Church. And you ask the person later, would you feel better now? Because it took some effort. They had to snap there maybe with other little kids and stuff, and here's a 50-year-old man, he goes, yes. And you say, would you feel better? And he says, yes. And you might see him a month later and say, are you attending church? And yeah, I feel better about it. But now, whatever it was, remember, I'm giving a potential. Well, to everybody, there was a potential mystical impetus to start with, way back there, that makes everyone that becomes religious, that's the origins of it. But if you ask the man now, and let's say that he experienced that was what was driving him in his later middle years to go back to the church. That, and of course, fear of death, but we'll ignore that. I know a guy that tried to start a church, he was going to run a church that he thought was going to be truth and advertising kind of church. And he called it the Church of I'm Afraid to Die. Thankfully, he didn't spend a lot of money on a down payment on a rent on a building, because, I mean, he was looking to me for successful marketing techniques after that. No, I'm not going to tell you who it was. I bet you can guess. If you ask the person now, follow this because it's in you, it's not in somebody else, what I'm talking about. The person can say, an ordinary person, and I'm not questioning this whatsoever, because it's true to them. If you say, well, do you feel now better that you are back in a church, that you are now a reconfirmed Episcopalian or Presbyterian or Jew or whatever, and he goes, well, yes. Do you understand that the more, and let's say that he feels satisfied, or that's as much effort as he's going to expend. If you say, well, you feel much better, does what was troubling your middle-aged soul, what was troubling you in your years, does the problem seem to be tempered somewhat? And he goes, yes. As a matter of fact, I feel much better. I now attend church almost on a regular weekly basis. I participate in some of the programs, and I read the Bible. I do whatever. I do certain things, and I do feel better. I'm going to tell you the truth. I do, and I'm not ashamed of it. And you say, well, I'm glad to hear it, if you knew the guy. So at the ordinary level, it has been salubrious. It has been beneficial to the man, but do you understand that if simultaneously we were looking at him as still having any mystical potential, which was the original, remember the original motivation for him becoming religious, it could have been 50 or 45 years previous, or 40, whatever, you understand, back then. But now that, whatever potential there was, to the same degree that he is satisfied being a Presbyterian, you understand that this now satisfies his disturbance, his disquiet. To that same degree, there is no chance of him actually quieting the disquiet. That if you're satisfied, having identified the problem and taken some measure that apparently helps, to that same degree, you cannot go back and actually do anything about what caused the original disquiet. There is one of the world's great popular cliches, not the most popular, I gave you the most popular last week, but one of the most popular is, and it's used even beyond a cliche now, it's used as a political gavel on or spear that people use on one another. It's taken as a truism, and that is that someone will criticize someone else's operations, primarily in the political arena, and say, well, what you people are trying to do, you're trying to deal with the symptoms instead of go back to the root causes. And that will stop almost any intelligent man temporarily, because there's nothing you can say to it. You know why? I just described why. Because the more that you can, apparently, temporarily treat the, quote, symptoms, to the same degree that you're having some success, to that same degree, it is an equation, you could not have any effect. Mm-hmm. You even have decreasing potential awareness of what the cause was. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those, there it is, outside of religion, it's the same thing I'm speaking of. The more that being a Jew or a Presbyterian or a Baptist, the more it cures what seems to be the disquiet of your soul, to the same degree, to that same degree that it succeeds, and that you say, I feel better. To the same degree it succeeds according to you. To that same degree, if you had any still interest, or if we were just going to talk about it, the same interest that actually caused it, the desire to know the secret of life, to the same degree that this now satisfies you, or calms you, acts as a balm, treats the symptom, to the same degree you could not have any knowledge, any awareness, you could not even look back good at, as they would call it, the cause. Of course, the cause is being alive. But that is, I could have used a whole evening using that political truism, but you ought to be to put together yourself the whole thing of them saying, well, and people can turn it right back on each other. There is no objective end to a stick, remember. There is no objective. You can pick up a stick and beat a guy, and as soon as you throw it down, he'll pick it up and beat you with it. So I don't mean there's any objective authenticity, any validity, any weight to the truism. It's just a stick. Because one guy, a conservative, a Republican, can stand up in Congress, to use our political body, and say, well, you Democrats are wanting to raise taxes and put in new social programs. Now, you're just going to give jobs and keep people on the public dole. But all of this, I know that people need jobs and people going hungry. I'm not saying that. But you people, again, you damn liberals, you Democrats, you big spenders, you keep doing that. And all you're trying to do is patch up. If they really think they're getting clever, they now say, you're trying to treat a cancer with a Band-Aid. And if the other side's not all that literate and look kind of puzzled, they say, you're just trying to treat the symptoms and never back to the root causes. And the other side of the aisle goes, oh. But then 5 minutes later, it's the same thing. It's not that there is any objective or objectivity to that kind of battering ram. But it stops everybody, because you cannot, if you're saying, there is no real response to that. Think about it. No matter what it is, I just picked out the obvious one to say, well, you can keep putting the poor people, the underclass of society, you keep putting them on the public payroll. You keep giving out money, our tax money. But all you're doing, you're treating symptoms, not the cause. Whatever the situation, it could have been religious, whatever it is, if you're on the other side of the aisle and you've just been accused of that, and you're a normal, sane person, the kind of ordinary person would be in the halls of Congress, and as the camera turns to you, or the guy actually looks at you like he's expecting a reply, there is no reply. Because at that level, it's down there irrefutable. I mean, you can't agree. The other side, it doesn't make the other person agree, but they realize this. Without realizing that they realize it, they realize life ain't a problem, so there ain't no cure. But the ordinary mind can't realize that, because if it did, everybody'd be out of a job, at least in Congress, or in the churches, or in the prisons, in the dance halls, in the bars. How would we get a drink? And who'd look after you once you got arrested? To the same degree that someone can identify the problem, my Presbyterian, my man who returns to his religion, to the exact same degree it is an equation, truly, to the same degree that having identified the problem and made some remedial effort, and by his definition, by society's definition, not ours, if he says, I do feel better now that I have reconfirmed myself to the church and I have now become religious, I feel better. To that same degree, that's what this represents over here, on that side of the fulcrum. And over here, it's to the same degree that he might have understood, let's mix them up, take the political truism, the cause, and not the symptoms, the cause of the underclass, the cause of crime, criminal behavior. We're just working on the symptoms. That's the symptoms. And you apparently treat the symptoms. I reconfirm myself back to the church, and I feel better. But then if you were actually still interested in the cause of the disquiet of my soul, to the same degree that this now satisfies you, that you're working on the symptoms, you can't even perceive of this. And I say perceive of it, it's just, you're not interested. If doing this, if going to church soothes you, there's an old story, or a bunch of them, about guys waiting around for the door of enlightenment, people going to monasteries. In fact, I think I made up one now that I think about it. That's the danger of making up so many stories that sometimes I now say, there's an ancient old story. And I know some of you, I'll start telling it and I think, God, that sounds familiar. And then I'll look at some of your faces and I realize, well, shit, I made that thing up. I keep thinking it's an old Hindu or Zen or yoga story. But about a guy that goes to a monastery, that kind of thing. That he's just convinced that they're the one place, and it's got a door in the side of the mountain, a little peephole, and he gives them the whole story about, I got to come in there, isn't this so-and-so, don't you do something? They go, yeah. They go, okay. The only guy that can let you in, though, is the head monk. And he only comes to the door just whenever he wants to. And if there's anybody here, he'll open the door, and he'll let you in. But I'm talking about he opens this door, and we never know when. Nobody, he just come up, and he just does it. He'll open the door, and whoever's there can come in. But it's like he'll open the door like this, and then he slam it. And then he can go away, and it could be, and the guy goes, you talking about like months or years? He said, he might walk away, and we don't know when he'll do it again. So he says, you got to be vigilant. And so there the guy stands. Of course, it might have helped if I'd built it up there. Went for years and years and had to save and struggle and go all over the world and go through all these search to finally find it. And then to get there, and they said, this is it. And so he stands there. And all this is going to get to, people use it in all sorts of simplistic manners, the same way they do all religious parables. But it gets down to the same thing of the control of attention, the control of one's mind, the study of one's own consciousness, because you know how the story is going, don't you? If not, I'll make it up for you. The guy stands there after all these trials and tribulations and hardships, And this is his one chance. He is so delighted. And he stands there, he watches the door, and he watches the door, and he listens, and he watches, and he watches, and watches. Now you know what's going to happen. I can make it crude. The beautiful girl walked by, loud noise, a bus went by. But it doesn't even need that. Do I have to make up something? Who the hell knows what he's thinking about? He's suddenly staring at internal traffic. And of course, there could be very good reason. Thinking about how his best friend or his father said, you'll never find places like that. That's imaginary. Or thinking about insults he had on the way over there. Thinking about tricksters, fake mystical schools. No matter what. Or thinking about what in the hell ever happened to the Mets. And he looks down. And the door goes, zoop, and he suddenly hears clack, and he looks. You know how it goes. The door just closed. Did it help, should I say, that the head monk only opens the door once every 80 years? Would that have helped? Maybe I should have done that. I make these stories too easy sometimes. The guy at the door said the head monk, they never know when, but he only opens it once every 80 years. And they can't tell you when the last time was, but he only does it once every 80 years. And then the guy stand there. And suddenly hears creak, boom, and it's gone. I mean, that's a good story to make people feel bad, but all it has to do is it has to do with the control of attention. At the simplest level, it has to do with the study and the understanding of what consciousness is. It doesn't have anything to do with getting into school, because there's no school on the side of a mountain worthy of getting into. Oh, there are some. But remember this, if they'll let you into it, you just consider what it's worth. I don't mean offense to anyone, but you know what you're worth. I know what I'm worth. You know what you're worth. If you go over there and they tell you how exclusive it is and how fortuitous, how extremely cosmically fortunate it is that you even found them and that they might let you in, if they even say that they might, and you stick around, there's all the proof you need of everything I always feared. Everything you should have feared. If they'll let you in, what could they know? There's only one place to get in. There's only one place to do the study correctly. But if you start off and try to tell people that, which I've sort of done, you can get some people to hang around, but they're very few in numbers. And even those who hang around, there seems to be a limit to it. And they keep waiting for, you're wired up to want to hear a problem identified. It's the human mind. It's having a porch. It's not a possibility. It's not something you selected, and it's not some grievance that fell upon you from life. It's the way the mind operates. And then the mind cannot find anywhere, apparently, worthy of consideration or deserving any direction, deserving to try it, unless it says, well, all right, here's what we do. Walk over here. Stand by the door. Meditate. Think of the name of God. Pray. And you go, well, okay. You know, you explain. I like the way you explained it, or I'll trust you. I'll do it. The danger, the problem of fixing on a problem is the same as it is for a man who says, I feel much better now that I have rededicated myself to being a Presbyterian. That's about all he'll ever do. And if you get somebody involved, right, here's the system. We're going to, with each and every breath, run through the periodic table, thinking of one element for each inhalation, then and we repeat it. But each time you repeat it, also think of it being printed on a sheet. And once you get all the way through, then think of the sheet as going through the full color spectrum. And then start all over. Or then think about it as going up the diatonic scale. You tell anybody, and you think, all right, I got it. I'm sure that's an allegory. It might be. It might not be. Well, I'm sure it was a parable about the guy waiting beside the door, and it opened and closed while he was looking off and got his mind running on auto. Yeah, that could be a metaphor. That could actually happen. What's the difference? I repeat that if you can see it in a certain way, the most efficient way should be, how about that? I'll get out of this yet. Rather than saying I could be proven wrong. Here it goes. Now I got it. By God, I knew if I stalled long enough, I'd figure out. It should be. See, I'm safe now. It should be the most efficient to not get involved of being a Presbyterian. And being a Presbyterian or being in anything is a solution, or at least a treatment to a problem. Because if someone still had the motivation. Now, everyone starts out wanting to be more conscious. That's what, if you're mentally sane, if you're genetically sound up here, then all of your life you want to grow. You want to be more conscious. Ordinary people end up with it being fed, that being soothed enough, they become religious, let's say. They can do other things, but the easy one, the obvious one, they become religious. But the more you do this, the more that satisfies you, the less likelihood, the less awareness, the less remembrance, the less attention you will give back to that. So if over here was the goal, being more conscious, there is where it seems almost impossible to get to. What I'm trying to describe to you, and I'm putting it in spatial terms now, would you not admit, to help me get out of this, that the most efficient way should be? Now, what if this even works? Well, you got the stories of Buddha, you got the stories of Jesus, and all of them, Muhammad, all the public ones, they went through, to some degree, the standard procedures of the day. But then it seemed to what made them extraordinary is that they got past it. That Buddha went through 2 or 3. He tried everything. And finally said, none of it's working. And all sorts of would-be mystics, I believe, as they would say, psychologically identify with that. Because they think, me too, I've tried everything. Even if it's possible, it seems to be very doubtful. Because the people who seem to be able to do it are so outstanding that damn religions, cultures, nations form around them. So, it seems to be quite difficult to ever get past this point. What I'm saying is, what should be the most efficient way is to bypass that. Now, you got to admit, see, I got that clean. Like a bacon souffle through a Canadian goose. It should be the most efficient. And yet it's damn near impossible, because it's like you start out attempting to do something and you think, well, there's nothing to do. Yeah. And then somebody, if there was somebody attempting to kind of pull that on you, then they keep talking like, well, there is kind of something to do. And it's like everybody keeps kicking rocks, or whoever you listen to, it's like they keep, kind of moving around, and you keep thinking, well, yeah, And then you kick them around the other way, and it's like people kind of shift positions, and then you spit, and then you scratch, and talk about this, and you talk about that, and you talk about the weather, and you keep hanging around. But that should be the most efficient. And yet, on the other hand, it's the very thing that people can listen to this presented in this sort of way and say, well, I like the basic idea, and you seem to have all but admitted that it's about the very thing that I've always been interested in, of being more conscious or enlightened and that sort of thing. You won't deny that that's what's involved. Well, so you must be teaching some new system or got some new idea to do it. Well, so you're not denying that you might have. Well, so you're not denying it. All right. Now, rather than us get involved with this is going on between me and somebody else, you do it to you. You think, well, what am I up to? What am I up to? What am I up to? What am I trying to do? Or if I do quit drinking, will it help? If I do start calling my mother every day, if I do go back and try to pay up all the child support to all my first and second wives, or you think of all these things, of all the problems. Maybe I should go to another culture and try to find some mystical teacher. All of that standing around kicking. You can even end up having no system, and it become almost a system. I said almost. That is the, again, I propose to you, I proffer, submit for your kind consideration that it should be the most efficient, but I will say that it's impossible for it to become a system. The system is the study of consciousness. And you tell somebody that, and they go, I like it. How do I go about it? Okay, go join go find a bunch of people and get down with them, and maybe, won't you save up, maybe buy a chimpanzee and a labyrinth, or some mice. Build your way up. And they go, well, good, now we're getting somewhere. Are you serious? If the method is the most efficient way, if all the methods amount to one thing, all the mystical books you've ever heard from St. Augustine, Aquinas, Kempis, Rumi, all the mystics of all the ages that are apparently praying to God, pleading, pay attention to me, God, why won't you return my love? They're all one thing. It's the mind attempting to study itself, and it's crying out that I wish I could bring this under some control. And that's all these pleas when they're at least raised literarily, let's say, to a mystical, apparent sounding level, is them saying, God, why have you put this, I'm using the Western versions, God, why have you put this great love in my heart for you, that it drives me crazy? I've devoted my whole life to pursuing the religious texts of my place, or going to church, going through the rituals. You're the one responsible. I wouldn't have it. You put it here. And yet, it's like I pray to you. I do all the rituals, and you won't answer me. You know, what can I do? I fall down, I pray, I'll cut myself, I'll bleed. But why will you not respond when you're the one that made me call out? I'm calling for the lover, and the lover will not respond. The further you get in the East, they like to use that. What is that saying? It's the mind going, you unruly son of a bitch, to itself. Why won't you straighten up? And it won't answer. It can't answer. It's having you hold a stick and you're just beating it, and there's nothing there. And you're going, damn it! It's you crying out at traffic. Instead of calling for God, and it's kind of a different version to use my metaphor, you turned it around, you're hollering at traffic like, why don't you shut the hell up out there? Why don't you people leave me alone and I could get somewhere? There's no traffic out there. You poor simple son of a bitch. The traffic's in here. And for you to stand there on the porch and holler, why don't they stop it? I refer you back to my political truism, my new one of the day, a porch divided against itself will stand forever. That is, you'll stand on the porch forever railing. Or, looked at the other way, it sounds a bit nicer, crying out to God, to your lover, the cosmic lover, the transcendental lover, why don't you return my affection? Why won't you talk to me? It's you saying, how come I cannot stop this son of a bitch? Well, where are you going to look? I know it to start out, everybody looks somewhere. Buddha looked somewhere, everybody looked somewhere. But, you know, finally, you got to grow up. You got to realize that there is no mystical monastery worth going to. As I've already pointed out to you, it's an uncomfortable fact, but if they'd have you, and you got any sense, you got no business, they don't know anything. What you're trying to do is study consciousness. And nobody on this planet, and I had a man go ahead and put it point blank for you tonight. He said, after surveying the collective's lack of interest in the matter, one man said to himself, if I myself do not undertake the study of consciousness, who will? It was a rhetorical thought, because the answer is no one will. Of course, that's what I'm saying here publicly doing, and you see what overwhelming, down there, just drowning success. The kinds of people who are interested, they don't want that. People are not wired up for it. That's not it. They're wired up to become a Presbyterian, or they might be wired up if I said, all right, let's get down to specifics. We're going to form the new church of intelligence, or the new system of intelligence, and write in for your cards, come down here and we'll tell you what the rituals and all. Just that would help some. They go, well, no, it's fine. That makes more sense. There'd be people that hear it just on that basis go, no, it makes more sense. Are they crazy? No, they're ordinary. They think, well, now it amounts to something. Now it goes somewhere. A porch that believes it goes somewhere will forever stand. And you'll forever stand on it.